Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Ellsworth here at RoofersCoffeeShop.com, and you are watching a Lunch and Learn. Welcome to lunchtime. I hope you all are eating something fabulously delicious. And I'm so excited to be chatting with Kevin from Engage today, and we have a whole presentation ready and geared up for you all. We're talking about being your own champion at work. And Kevin, I would love to just start us off if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Engage.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kevin Mahoney. I'm a sales engineer here at Engage, and we're a sales enablement platform essentially. We help you present your company's story better to customers, help them connect better in the home. And then in the back end, we also provide just a robust system of analytics to make sure that like your sales reps out in the field are hitting all their marks. And it really is used just as much as a training tool as it is a selling tool. So yeah, it's just a little pitch about what Engage is. And I'm sure I'm going to touch a little bit more on it as we go through this little lunch and learn process as well.
Awesome. I'm excited. So, to start out, I know all of you have your learning guides in front of you. I will state the three learning objectives for this lunch and learn, and they are understanding self advocacy, how to use analytics to keep yourself accountable, and how to bring new tech to the table. So, Kevin, let's start out with a little bit of an agenda overview going over those three learning objectives.
All right. So again, today's agenda, we just went through the welcome phase here. The next thing we're going to talk about is what it means to be your own champion. And then once you actually have that defined, how do you use analytics to make yourself accountable for those aspects of what makes you a champion? And then furthermore, this is sort of where Engage might actually come in as a tie-in, but doesn't necessarily have to be Engage. But how do you bring new tech ideas to your manager? And again, you're champion not only yourself, but your actual thoughts and values. And when new technology becomes a part of that, you need to be able to have that conversation with a manager in a way that makes sense. And then at the end, test your knowledge. That's kind of just the closing remarks. We'll just leave with some rhetorical questions that you should ask yourself when you're actually trying to implement this in your own life.
I love it. Amazing. So, the first learning objective is understanding self advocacy. Um, Kevin, why is self advocacy so important and crucial?
Well, it's very important and crucial because in an ideal world, your peers and your bosses would be all advocating for you 24/7, right? We love to see it. I am fortunate enough at Engage to work in an environment that cultivates that type of attitude. But in general, you shouldn't assume that's the way it operates. So you should really operate as if this real world we live in does not revolve around you 24/7. People are busy and they're focusing on their own day to day problems and their own career growth goals as well. So I learned to understand that early on in my career. And I think the earlier you accept this reality, the sooner you can kind of work with around that and develop the tools and techniques to advocate for yourself more effectively, knowing that you aren't the center of attention all the time. You need to work with other people and work around their schedules and make sure that your goals align with their goals, because that's the best way to kind of advocate for yourself. Yeah. And again, what does it look like to be your own champion? Well, really, when there's always a question like this, the one thing I've been learning to do in my role is to always start out with another question, right? Because giving a straight answer, you really want to probe the actual nature of the question itself. So first of all, you should be asking yourself, what is a champion, right? That definition may change depending on what role you were in. And if you can't define it, you're going to have trouble creating those goals in the first place. And probably the best way to do this is just take an exercise and write down some attributes and belief statements, and then devise your measurable goals to substantiate those qualities. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, I'd love to know what a champion looks like to you in your realm.
Absolutely. So one reason why I was picked for this talk is I have a role as what's called a sales or systems engineer, and that's kind of an interesting role because I'm not sales, I'm not quite marketing, I'm not quite an engineer, but I'm the glue that fills all those gaps. And really, when you're in that kind of role where you have multiple hats, every company has that person that wears multiple hats, right? And you really need to be an advocate for yourself to define what those metrics are that means you're successful. Because when you're kind of blurring the lines a bit, you need to really work with your managers and say, hey, how am I being successful in sales? How am I being successful in marketing? How am I being successful on the engineering side and the product side? And really, that process works best as a two-way street with your manager to help make that effort. It's something we like to call managing up. It's not a term we invented, but it's literally a term out there. Google it. It's essentially kind of holding your manager accountable and helping them help you. And I'm fortunate enough to have regular one-on-ones with my bosses and mentors, and I think it's crucial to keep that process alive. Despite the perceived power dynamic that, they're your manager, they're your boss, it is a very much a collaborative effort. And you kind of work together to shape the goals that both of you agree are important. And, it's not just to your personal growth. Again, touching back, the world does not revolve around me 24/7, right? So you have to give them an incentive. And if your manager isn't currently in a space where they're finding the time, you need to make it worth their while. This is a business. They're not your personal life coach. You're not paying them. They're paying you, right? So, if I can't go to my boss and say, hey, my goal is to sleep 8 hours a night and make millions of dollars, because what incentive do they have to help me out there? I mean, sure, it's a great end game goal, but, at the same time, you need to really construct measurable goals that benefit both you, your manager, and the business. And that's the enticing, that's the carrot, right? So, if you have trouble managing up, make it worth their while, and don't be afraid to push and hold them accountable to that, because their job as a manager is to also manage your success as well. So there's just as much table stakes in it for them as well.
That is so true. And I like to go off of that. I love what you said about managing up. And it's almost like an open line of communication. Like they can't help you grow unless you're communicating with them on what you need. And I love that because it's really hard, especially I feel like now, to be able to be open and honest with maybe a manager or a CEO, a big boss in your company. Um, and obviously very respectful, but I think it's so important to have that open line of communication. I love that.
Absolutely, Megan. And look, managers differ from place to place. We've all worked under that very difficult manager, and sometimes maybe they got put in management because I don't want to say it's failing upwards, but because there is a vacuum or a void. Maybe the previous manager moved on and you put your best sales rep in that position, and they're learning too, right? So, don't assume that they all have it figured out and that they're all that personality type. So there does take a little bit of intuitiveness to know how to work with different personality types. And that's something you can train yourself on as well. Are they not a very communicative person? Well, there's always some way to do communication. Maybe it's better over text, or maybe it's better over face to face. And sometimes you might have to push them a little bit because they need to grow as well. And if you're having a manager that's very hands off and not managing you, it's really not fair to you, because if you're not growing, you're not helping them succeed and you're not helping the business succeed. So the incentive is there for everybody.
Okay, Kevin. So we're already at learning objective number 2. So, how do you use analytics to keep yourself accountable? I'm really intrigued by this.
Well, it's a great question, Megan. And again, I work as a systems or sales engineer for Engage. And so my analytics are very unique to my role. And so really, it should start out with asking questions. Again, like to any question, you always ask the next question. So for me, it's, to whom am I accountable, and for what am I accountable, right? So my analytics or my metrics may differ than somebody else in a different role. And so I usually work to answer those questions first. And from that point, we kind of devise our analytics, and we put in kind of measurable goals and milestones and KPIs for me to hit. And from there, it's just a continuous feedback loop. So again, I work for Engage. Our 3 pillars are create, share, and measure. Measure means analytics. So we're all about analytics here at this company. And I've been kind of repeating this theme of measuring progress and results. It doesn't just help you track your personal growth, but it really holds all sides accountable. So you're not really having your boss judge you on their gut feeling because you're such a likable person. Or if you're not a likable person, but you bring in the numbers, well, guess what? Those numbers back you up. So having that hard data kind of leaves less ambiguity as to whether or not you're achieving your goals. And so helps out in all those situations where you just might have an interpersonal disconnect with your manager, but the numbers are good, right? So we've always seen situations where you don't see eye to eye with your manager, but he knows or she knows that you're pulling in the right numbers. And so, hey, they can work on that disconnect somewhere else, but you're actually providing value to the business and to the manager's success as well.
Yeah. What are KPIs and how do you use them to constantly improve?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. KPIs are just another way of saying these are the measurable goals everyone agrees is important to measure. So it's kind of where you and your business align. They're like scorecards that show how successful a project, a team, or a business is achieving specific targets. So some example KPIs in sales might be conversion rate, customer lifetime value, or customer acquisition cost, or CAC. And you can really split them up into leading and lagging indicators. Leading indicators are kind of previews of potential outcomes. So, for example, generating a target number of leads to help predict like future conversions into sales. So it's all about kind of predictive modeling. Now, lagging indicators are almost a little bit more applicable to myself, and they are retrospective views on existing outcomes. So, for example, sales revenue is a lagging indicator of past sales activities. And so in my role, it's you really have to look at the role to define your KPIs. And so sales might look at close rates, average deal size, and demo rates. But somebody in my role, I'm in a unique position where I kind of fit between the cracks. And so I'm empowering sales, product and engineering and marketing and customer success. When you're doing that, you're more empowering the other people to do their jobs. And so really the KPIs for me are going to be a lot of lagging indicators and much less in the leading factors. So for example, rather than me booking X number of appointments a week as a leading indicator, I tag along with sales to provide technical and product support and then base my results more on the lagging indicators of like, okay, if it's an existing customer, did they renew with us, right? So it's a customer longevity play for me. And so it's kind of the tide that raises all boats in my case. And so those are really important things to do, but they're also really hard to define because how do you say I had an impact on something when you're a contributing factor? And that's where you have to really work with your manager to be like, how do we measure this? Because not all of these are easy. Like some leading indicators are sure, it's easy. Do 20 calls a week. That's fine. But again, maybe it's not that easy. What do those calls entail? What's the point of measuring it if you don't know the outcomes, right? You need to have something actionable on those items.
What does KPI stand for?
Oh, sorry, key performance indicators. So yeah, sorry about that. That's probably the most important part, the most fundamental definition. It's interesting too because when I first heard the term, I was like, oh, this is like business speak, right? This is something that like middle management likes to toss around because they know a lot of acronyms, but it's really actually vitally important. And it's just a fancy way, or maybe actually more of a short way of just saying these are the goals that everybody shares between you and your boss, and like you need to hit these marks. This is what indicates that you're being successful at your role.
Okay. So I know that you were saying they look different for different roles. How would you recommend people put these goals into place?
So SMART goals, it's something that's common sense. And so when you have to remember the acronym, it's like, I can't remember the order of them, but you actually know when you hear them, they make sense. So you need to really set time aside to ensure you achieve your goals. And one thing that really helps with that is that they're, quote, SMART goals acronym. And so SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Those are all crucially, vitally important for your goals, because if you have kind of like generic goals with no end time in mind, how do you track against that? It's going to just become this out of control spiral. So you really want to, and this is where you also work with your manager as well. Like, what's a good time frame to have this goal? And if the goal seems too big, break it down. I find it very easy for me to just, if it's something seems too daunting, break it down into smaller tasks. There's nothing there's no law in the universe that says you can't do that, right? So um, you need to take the time to do the measurement too. So it's really important that this is a process, right? And it's probably the easiest part to fall off the wagon, because if you're losing that cadence of one-on-ones with your manager, or they're taking away your time to actually do the measurement, because again, it takes time. You have to take time to do the measurement before starting the task. You have to estimate what it's going to take to accomplish that goal. And then there's time where you have to reassess and redefine, what's the time requirement? Are there dependencies? Sometimes you have to wait on other people. So there's all these outside factors. And so if you're not taking the time to do that and you're falling off the wagon, well, guess what? You're really stunting your personal growth, and you're also doing a disservice to yourself and the manager. And at the same time, the manager is doing a disservice to you and themselves if they're saying, I don't have time to put you on this. We have something else we need to put you on. So you need to give that room to cultivate that. And it's a continuous process. So, I've definitely been in situations where in previous places where bosses did not have regular one-on-ones with me. They'd push it off because it wasn't as important, right? They're just like, are you doing okay? Good. All right. Well, let's just push this off till next week. But, if you're not taking the time, it's going to just continue to just be pushed off and pushed off. And it also usually is endemic of what's called being like reactive versus proactive too, right? Because you're pushing it off because you think there's an alligator closer to your boat, right? And sometimes, most of the time, they're not emergencies, right? It's just, I didn't feel it today. It's Friday afternoon. I feel like clocking off early. Can we just, right? So you do need to make an effort to put in the time and make sure that's repeatable, because again, it's a process. It's like people who work out. I don't look like a person who works out, but those people who do, they do it because they do it on a regular basis, right? So
True. True. I also don't work out.
exactly. I do eat at a regular cadence though, and so it's been working out great for me.
Me too.
Those are the important things to do. It's making sure that it's like you have time and that you're putting realistic goals forward, because that's really, when you have that, then you can put in the analytics. You can define analytics. But it really has to be time bound, and it has to be relevant and measurable and specific.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. So, how would you recommend implementing personal analytic tracking? Um, and for an employee or a company?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Again, this kind of circles back to being your own advocate, right? uh, Half the time, your boss might not be thinking about this. So really, you should be thinking about it first, being proactive about the situation. So um, we at Engage have a lot of different systems to do this. So again, our software provides, like I said earlier, robust analytics. And so, we do track against our own Engage for Sales platform a lot of the time. So, when we have salespeople out there presenting, or if I'm presenting, we can track the analytics of who presented, what pages or and sections did they present, how long did they spend on those items, and we can always compare those metrics between multiple individuals. So not only in a personal growth level, but a team growth level. It's a team sport. Um, so when your manager's looking and saying, "Hey, I noticed that Kevin spent 2 more minutes on average talking about the company's story, and 4 more minutes talking about the products and installation process, he has a higher close rate. I should really go back to the other team and have them focus on those areas and see if their numbers go up." So, and again, analytics should be making you ask deeper questions. You should see numbers, and then you should say, "Hey, I wonder why that is. Why is that up? Or why is that lower? What can I do?" And so when we're using Engage ourselves as presentations, we're definitely dog fooding or consuming our own analytics, because we built this awesome system. Why not use it ourselves?
Yeah. That's great advice. That little tidbit right there is analytics should help you or make you ask deeper questions. That is so good. I know people out there are taking notes on their learning guide. So write that one down, cuz if you're getting analytics and it's not prompting a deeper question, maybe they're not the right analytics.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll probably go into a little bit deeper depth when we get to the success stories after this, because I have some really good anecdotes. But um, uh, on the other end of it too, it's it's not going to be the only analytics. Like our presentation software is awesome, right? But there's still some analytics that you want to have in your CRM. And maybe if you're doing marketing or customer success, you're going to be logging that information there. We don't ever want to be that product that people have to go into to do other things when that source of truth lives in the CRM. So, if you're using your CRM, like, also define what your KPIs look like in there. So that might be your call dispositions, right? So when you're reaching out to an existing customer as a follow-up, what's that experience like? How are they responding? How much more likely are they going to return to you for business or refer you to other customers? So there's a lot that happens at the end of what we consider as that traditional funnel of, once we get them to sign and pay for a job, well, there's actually a whole other side of the hourglass because that funnel grows back out, because now it's all about retention, keeping customer satisfaction very high, and also making sure that they are singing our praises, right? So, and there, that a lot of that happens in probably a CRM system. It's good to work with your manager to figure out what's the right data to track there. And again, don't track empty KPIs. Like, don't treat the exercise of like, well, hey, number of calls per week, that sounds like a good KPI. Like, why is it a good KPI? You should be asking yourself, why are we tracking this? Exactly. So you're really looking for, like, what are they saying about our product or service? What are they saying about our customer success skills? And so it becomes discovery and data collection, and it does provide immediate value. Yeah, so this is great because both of these happen in the same week. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this is more of like how it all works in concert or in symphony. So I've been talking about like the individual instruments that kind of play, but with real world scenarios, I was talking to an owner of a business, and he was just talking about how he had no time to focus on his sales content. He was apologizing. That's when we're like, well, hey man, you're busy, right? And he said, he's so busy splitting up his time because he was moving offices. They're actually upgrading to a new office space. And everybody knows that when you move offices, job roles disappear. Everybody's a box mover, right? So, and exactly. And he was splitting that time between doing that and doing physical ride-alongs with his reps out in the field. You got a new crop coming in, so you have a little bit of training. And so I asked him, hey, have you had a chance to take a look at Engage's analytics to do virtual ride-alongs? Because our analytics kind of show the linear progression of like a rep there, like how long did they spend when they started the presentation and every subsequent page they did. And I suggested, like, hey, could you potentially reduce the amount of physical ride-alongs and then maybe focus more on your sales content and just kind of monitor remotely for those people that are probably a little bit closer to graduation, metaphorically, right? So you probably want to get them out in the wild sooner and less of that time being the helicopter parents. Like, like, hey, maybe if I put them out in the field, they might do the job. And so I'll just kind of monitor remotely. Well, guess what? Now he's in the office just monitoring that. He's working on the sales content. So not only does it save him time to focus on more important tasks, but it also reduces his like customer acquisition cost. That's a KPI for anybody at any level, because he's not spending his own time and hours out on the road with that person. So he's not spending redundant hours. So it reduces the cost for that new customer. So again, you can think of anything as contributing to a KPI in any way. And, even when you're a sales manager or owner at that level. And that's not just unique. 2 days ago, we had a roofing company stop by my house doing their usual neighborhood inspection knocking campaign, where they do like hey, we were checking out your neighbor's roof when we were in the neighborhood. We thought we'd check out yours. And this is what I love as an Engage user, because it's kind of our house is a honeypot, right? So it's great for me because they had a trainer out along with a new rep in the field. And I get to see how they train these people to sell out there, right? And even better is, when you're seeing them not selling with Engage, like what's their process like? And so I sit there out there and ask a lot of questions. And, I was sitting there wondering, like, okay, they had nothing out there, no tablet, no nothing. So I was making me wonder, like, if this trainer had not been there, there had been no way for them to know that junior rep had been sticking to the scripts or saying all the key important pieces. No tracking whatsoever. So I actually pulled out Engage and did the little pitch to him, on the tablet. And they immediately saw the value, both the trainee and the trainer. So the trainee saw the value because it provided him with the guardrails for that junior rep to remember all the statistics and talking points. When you're saying like, hey, 10% of, yada yada does something, oh, like that's something you have to memorize. But when it's actually there on a presentation and you're actually showing it to the homeowner too, with some visible damage to a roof or something like that, that's far more impactful than just having some guy recognize the script, have to train them to make the eye contact, handle all the objections. So you're having them focus more on the conversation flow, and the content can kind of speak for itself. So they saw the value of that. And then the trainer saw the value of, hey, I can probably transition much more early off from doing the physical ride-alongs and monitor again from a virtual ride-along. And again, when you're trying to teach somebody to fly, you don't really know until they leave the nest, right? And so it's not until they're kind of their solo ventures where you can really see where their mettle is. And so that's kind of where we provide a lot of that insight. And additionally, when you're working with larger teams, that's where it becomes, really big. Because if you're in charge of a lot of regions, you want to have a roll-up view. So even at a macro level, you want to see how everybody's performing. So that's kind of where our success stories lie, is that people can just kind of check in down to the individual rep level, but they always start out the macro. So if I'm like a business owner and I wake up for my morning coffee and I just want to see, how did we do this week? You get the aggregate, right? 20 presentations, average 18 minutes, our sales were up. Again, when you start at those macro levels, you always have questions. Why? What's making that successful? Then you start drilling in and be like, oh, that's right. During the sales meeting this week, we talked about not pushing, but, talking more about this new product line. And it seems to be, gangbusters, this week. So I wonder why that is. Oh, they're speaking this much time on this particular product, a little bit less time on this other area where they're losing the customer. So again, that's, drilling down into those analytics is extremely valuable in the real world.
That is so cool. I absolutely love that you were pitching Engage to this roofer. I love that so much. And I think you're so right, especially it would affect every person in every level. Like you said, the trainee and the trainer were both really interested in it. And like you said, a business owner, I love that. So they can just sit and enjoy a cup of coffee, rather than going and checking in on all their different people that report to them, and getting all of the latest reports. They can just do it right there from one interface.
Absolutely. And you really have to kind of believe in your product. So just to even go back to goals, like in Champion, like you have to really believe in what you're doing. So I believe in what I'm doing. That's why I'm pitching Engage to roofers
Yeah,
who are pitching me new roofs, right? So I believe in the product and I believe in the value I provide. And so really, if you don't believe in what you're doing, you're probably in the wrong business,
that's so
the wrong
true.
industry. Find your right fit. It might not be there, but find it, because you're going to be much more successful there. So I happen
Yeah,
to be in the place where I believe immensely in the platform and that it's helping people. And so when you believe in something, it makes it much easier to define those goals and saying like,
so
how do I
true.
make this better? How do I make myself better at kind of advocating for this solution and helping people out?
Yeah. Well, we've come to the third learning objective already, which is crazy. But um, so how do you bring this new tech to the table? That's the next learning objective.
Absolutely. So I'll probably start with saying something that sounds like we're not trying to sell ourselves, but don't pick a new technology just because it's the hot new thing. uh, it, like we're hearing all about AI right now, right? You don't add AI to your system because you don't understand it, but you hear it's a cool buzzword and everybody else is doing it, right? um, there is something of identifying trends and making sure that you get ahead of them, but don't dive into something just because it's cool, right? Because if you don't have a plan for it to actually contribute to solving a problem or making your company more successful, well, guess what? You probably just wasted a lot of money on something that you didn't really give a fair shot because you didn't need it in the first place. So don't be a hammer looking for a nail. Um, it should really start out with identifying an existing problem or an existing opportunity and comparing the pros and cons of a new technology getting you to that next step of either solving that problem or growing to that next point in your system. So for example, like for our software system, let's say that you're part of a roll up operation or some kind of merging of companies, and you need to get on a consistent standard. Well, great, we offer roll ups on our analytics. So we're a way to help standardize that process across multiple brands. And back to the tools and techniques, we're big fans of something called the 131 framework. You can use this at any part of your life. It doesn't even apply to if you're a roofer or an engineer. You could just be problem solving something at home. It's even good for choosing like where to go on vacation. But it's you essentially define one problem, you come up with three solutions, and then from that you make one recommendation. So again, it sounds super simple, right? But that's how all these cool frameworks are. They always sound like they make common sense. And like, why didn't I think of that? Or I kind of do something like that. So yeah, and really the spirit of this is like, don't be in the habit of coming to your manager with problems without solutions. Because when people come to me and just complain about stuff, I'm like, well, that's great, but like, have you tried thinking about something so I don't have to think about your problem for you? Again, people are busy. World doesn't revolve around you. So it's always good to come at them with solutions. And it's even better when you come up with three, because why three? Why is three a good number? Most of the time, when it's just one solution, you're just going to go with what you're familiar with, what you're comfortable with. And so going outside of your comfort zone and finding three different angles to help against that bias will often end up with you cherry picking the best ideas from all three. So it kind of helps you go outside your comfort zone, identify three different ways to tackle a problem. And then providing your one recommendation just kind of shows your confidence in your ability to propose a solution. You're saying, hey, I'm being proactive. I gave you three options. This is my recommendation based on my expertise. And it might not be the solution your manager goes with. They might have other knowledge that says, well, actually, this is probably better, but I really appreciate the amount of insight you put into this. But it still demonstrates that proactivity and the ability to demonstrate critical thinking skills and the ability to make decisions. And that's, again, it's an evergreen quality of being your own advocate or champion, is that you are actually making suggestions.
I love that. I think I have a hard time thinking under pressure. And when someone, maybe I find them really important, they're higher up in the company than me, and they're kind of quizzing me on something or asking me to find a better solution, I get thrown kind of for a loop. And I think that is such a good way to pull in your thoughts. And also, maybe you can't do it in the moment, but you can go back and say, I'm going to do 131 and I'm going to think about it. I'm going to give you three solutions and one recommendation, and we're going to fix this. And I love that.
Absolutely. And it kind of fits beautifully with these four squares I have. It's like building your case is identifying the problem and your solutions, pitching to your manager. These are the options. This is what I suggest. Overcoming objections. They're always going to have questions. So you need to be able to answer those. And for the ones you don't know, do not feel bad about saying, I don't know. That's the worst thing you can do, is lie or just nod or say, well, it's not going to be a problem, or we'll figure it out. It's okay not to know something. The important thing is that you want to find out, is it worth figuring out an answer to that question? Is that objection important, and why? Because that might help you go back and reassess. So again, it's a collaboration piece, right? It's a collaborative relationship.
I'd love to just kind of summarize this great talk we've had, unless there's anything on learning objective 3 you want to add.
Yeah. So for the recap here, again, analytics. So again, you want to define what makes a champion, right? That's a vitally important. And what are those qualities? And your analytics are basically a way of measuring those KPIs, those key performance indicators that you assign or ascribe to those qualities. So, what makes me a good systems or sales engineer? What are the qualities of that? Well, it's being terrifically customer focused. It's being about open to a lot of solutions. It's about asking a lot of questions. And so, how do I define metrics on that? So then I'll be like, okay, customer focus. Am I taking enough time to meet with them so that they feel valued? Am I asking them the right questions? Am I helping them grow their business? What kind of metrics can I measure off of that? And again, if I don't have the framework and tools there, that's when I define goals, and they're kind of quickly, easily, measurably defined goals that you have time boxed so that you can kind of chart your growth. So it's all kind of coming together to kind of push into being that champion right there. So yeah, really the analytics there are just a way to make sure that you're on track, right? You want some kind of assurance that you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to encourage all the listeners out there too to start tracking your KPIs, and look for tech solutions that you could introduce into your companies to help you track analytics and improve your business.
I don't want to necessarily treat this as a quiz question that I'm asking now. These should be questions that you should be asking of yourself essentially every time you're doing something that is pertaining towards your growth or even just your daily tasks in life. And so um, maybe a good habit is asking yourself, what is one KPI you could track right now to keep yourself accountable at work? And saying accountable at work kind of feels like you're not doing your job. That's not what we're saying. It's more about like, what is one KPI that you could track to make yourself more successful at work? That's probably a better way of thinking about it. um, and then two, what are two benefits of bringing new technology to your manager? So or hey, what are three benefits if we're in the spirit of 131? But yeah, start thinking about benefits there. And again, don't think of them as just blind benefits because it's cool or because it brings some kind of edginess factor to it. No, like what are some concrete benefits that you know will grow your company and grow it in a way that is um, not only just like a one-time benefit, but like something that's sustainable over time. So start thinking about that as well. Like, what value does this bring to everybody at the table? And then number three, this is one that I constantly still ask myself. You'll probably always be working on this for the rest of your life. How can you effectively pitch a new tech idea to your manager? So this is a work in progress. So really it's about, maybe this is something where you could even do your own dog fooding and do your own metrics and analytics on how you're doing this. It might start out pretty bad if you're not good at pitching new tech ideas to your manager, but start actually tracking, like, what are people responding to, what are they dismissing, am I being effectively communicative in these ideas? So you can even, just for number three, you can actually kind of do all the analytics and metrics tracking just on this question, because it's going to be a continuously evolving process.
Wow. I love that you had questions for people to think about for themselves, not just like, all right, we're going to quiz you now on everything we've talked about. So I love that because being able to go internal and see how you can make yourself better is how we make everything better. So
Exactly.
I urge everyone to really think about this and what are you keeping track of right now in terms of KPIs, and maybe are they working for you? Are they not? And I love that you said the third one is a work in progress because it always is. I love that.
Exactly. These aren't studying for the test. This is the studying for life, right? So this is, you're constantly going to be asking yourself these questions in one form or another. It's evergreen, always applicable.
Yep. Amazing. Well, Kevin, thank you so, so much for chatting with me today and um, giving a great lunch and learn. I hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. Where can they reach you to get more information on Engage?
Absolutely. So, those of you who have cell phones and have live in the 21st century, you can scan this QR code right here. For those of you like me who, for some reason, don't use QR codes, so it kind of betrays my age. And speaking as a person that's an advocate for technology, you can just manually go to www.engage.io/demo. Additionally, you can call us if you're really old school cool. Dial 212-608-9146. We're here on all channels, so we're here to answer your calls and your prayers.
Amazing. You can also go to rooferscoffeeshop.com to the Engage directory to learn more and find all this information there as well. Kevin, thank you again. This has been amazing.
This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Absolutely. Thank you one last time. And everyone, please make sure to go check out that Engage directory. And we'll see you next month on the next Lunch and Learn.